Well, while the president's reaction to the loss of 4 American troops comes under scrutiny, there is also the critical question of what went so wrong during that military mission in Niger 2 weeks ago. The Pentagon has now sent a team of specialists to the African nation as part of its inquiry. They want to know if the American forces had adequate protective equipment and whether they were prepared for the attack. Was there enough intelligence ahead of the mission? And what was the response to the ambush? One official says the amount of confusion during and after the mission was, quote, tremendous. The body of the 4th American soldier wasn't found until nearly 2 days after the ambush. And to add to that confusion, it's still unclear who flew the medevac rescue helicopter after the attack. The U.S. military first said it was the French military, then the U.S. military. And now it may have been a U.S. contractor. And now the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, John McCain, is demanding answers, telling reporters that the administration has not been upfront about what happened. Carol Lee, what are you hearing about this?
Well, Mika, there are so many questions about this, what happened here, and it's all getting sort of blurred by this fight that the president has decided that he wanted to pick with the families of these victims. And I think what you're going to see here in terms of, if you look at just John McCain, if you remember when there was the raid in Yemen and there were questions that were raised about that, the White House really pushed back on Senator McCain and basically said that it was unpatriotic for anyone to question this raid and what happened. And I don't think you're going to see that with this because, one, it's become so front and center. Two, I think there are lessons learned from the way that that the White House pushback on Yemen went. And so you're going to see questions coming from the Hill. The families have questions. There's plenty of reporting that has questions. And this is going to be something that the White House is going to have to answer for.
Yeah, which, of course, Clint, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that's one of the reasons the president didn't talk about these 4 deaths for some time. That it appears like it was similar to the Yemen raid. A lot of questions on why were they there, were they equipped, what happened that night, and should it have been avoided? What can you tell us about this raid? What are you looking at?
What's interesting about it is we've seen an aggressive stance on our counterterrorism, pushing the fringes a little bit more, and where these guys was right out on the border between Niger and Mali and the fringe of our counterterrorism fight. I've worked on this area a little bit, and we were worried decades ago about putting forces too far out on that fringe. This is a remote area; it's hard to support. You talk about medevac or recovery, and then you put it in comparison. If you remember, there was an attack in Benghazi that we've been talking about for years. This isn't that dissimilar, where we had, U.S. forces very much extended out on the frontiers. Working with host nation forces, and did they have the right support? I think it's going to be very interesting in the days coming forward.
So Clint, explain really quickly. Clint, explain really quickly why were they there? I mean, why would they have been in such a remote region?
In the Sahel, this area right here, the strategy has always been called part of the Counterterrorism Sahara Initiative, and it was to train and equip forces around the world to do essentially counterterrorism by, with, and through, essentially, and to train up these forces. And that's a special forces mission. If you look back, the traditional special forces mission is to build these indigenous forces to go after threats far and wide. They, though, are way out on the periphery. You're going, it sounds like they were part of a patrol that was working with Niger's forces that came under a very strong ambush. I've heard estimates that was up to 50 people ambushing this special forces team and a very weak force, and they were very much extended. So when we're talking about medevac, who flew the medevac mission, there are very few resources when you're that far extended to actually go out and recover or support troops that are doing that.
Clint, how unusual is it to that 4th body, which turned out to be Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, who we'll talk about in just a second, that he was left there for almost 2 days? It's not often you hear about that. Yeah,
part of this and why I think it is a scary situation is you're talking about very few Americans out there running this operation who are extended at tremendous distances. You're talking sometimes hundreds of kilometers between these patrols and the base. So I think once this happened and they couldn't locate that body, who is actually going to go out to do the search and recovery mission? It's so far extended into the desert, there's really no resources to do it. I think that's the 2-day period it took to get them.
Still a ton of questions about this.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.